to the Morning Constitution, where justice is no justice at all. We're here at the Oxford in Altamont Springs, and this is production of Jay in Washington, your political innovation firm. We're very excited about rolling out the things that we have uh, coming up. I mean, we have our political salsa, we have our leadership academy, we have so much coming out. We're really excited. But now the title of this is because this is the last week. This is the last week that the Supreme Court is, making decisions before they go on break. And we all know it's been 1 year since the decision of Roe v. Wade. If you don't, then you haven't been paying attention to all the radicals out there. You know, that's see that's a decision I truly believe, if you looked at it for what it is, it would not cause so much controversy. Give your states the right to do what they want to. That way, people will move to the state they deserve to live in or want to live in. There are people that won't move, and they don't realize that they're getting taxed to death until they retire, and they say, I need to be able to live, and they move down to Florida. Or they move down to Tennessee so they can use that retirement that they earned up north, where the dollar's gonna go further. So, hey, Florida, we have no income tax, so even if you work, you're not gonna have to pay. But we got plenty of sales tax, and just like Seminole County, we have our sales tax getting ready to disappear if you don't vote for it, and that's a lot of money that goes away in your government. So, the Supreme Court, man, United States highest court. Who on earth decided to give this court a lifetime appointment? So the president of the United States gets to appoint the Supreme Court justice. The Senate gets to question them, gets to interrogate them. And we've had some really good interrogations, and one justice that's back in the news had a lot of news just getting there, and that was Clarence Thomas. But the court has had several different arrangements over its lifetime. So we've had more justices, we've had less justices. I'm not going to go through all that, but I'm going to focus on a lifetime appointment. A lifetime appointment for somebody from one administration to the next. But that's the tenure. Now, what is this all about, making these decisions? Where do these decisions come from? Well, you got to go back, and you've got to look at the Supreme Court as the fledgling authority that it was. Now, it was truly designed, the legal system, off of the English style. So, boy, I'm going to get out to this. I'm going to get out all the brain dead today that I can possibly, because I've been thinking about this. But this court had no authority. I mean, it was a lifetime appointment. It had no definition. You read the Constitution, it gives you, it just gives you that body. It says, hey, this is the Supreme Court. But now we just kind of sit there and go, well, we have three branches of government. We have the executive branch, we have the legislative branch, and then we have the judicial branch. And then we define them, because just like George Washington really set the stage for how the executive branch was going to run. How are you going to run this all by myself? I can't run this all by myself, so I'm going to need some people to work with me. So I'm going to need to put a cabinet together. Now, Look at the Constitution, everybody. Where is the cabinet in that Constitution? Does it exist? No. But the President of the United States felt the only way he could do his job of enforcing the legislation that was going to come was to put a group of people around him that would do the job. Same thing. You had this. You had the legislature. The legislator. The legislature took forever to get together, and it didn't meet like it does today. It wasn't like a full time on job. I mean, hey, I'm working every day there. They still don't work every day there. They go back and forth. But what about the Supreme Court? This body had no definition. So then they get in there and they decide, okay, our job is to interpret the Constitution of the United States. We're to determine what law is good law and what law is bad law. We're going to take this authority because it's not defined. So we look at this and we go, well, how do I absolutely have that authority? Well, they got it because, again, we always hear this word precedence. They set the precedence, and that has had what it's continued to do. So setting precedents, the Supreme Court decisions, they set the legal precedents that guide lower court for the future. So these precedents often reference case law, and they shape the interpretation. So we all know certain ones. Hey, Roe v. Wade, it's precedents. Well, it was bad law because there was nothing in the Constitution that protected or gave this right protection, and yet it was the states that had the right to. We already went over that. Listen, anything that's not enumerated in the Constitution, the states have the right to. And abortion's not in the Constitution. So if you want an amendment, you make an amendment. But this is crazy stuff. Now, how do we get there? Now, what are oral arguments? Now, oral arguments. This is the fun part because oral arguments are from the attorneys and representing the parties, right? So they go in there and they sit in front of the justices and they plead their case. Now, this is a strange. How do I put this? This is a strange characteristic, anyways, because here you have Clarence Thomas barely says a word. So you have people sitting there listening to the justices to try to get an idea of what they're thinking by what questions they ask. And that can backfire on you all the time because you can say, I really think they're going to overturn this decision of the lower court. All of a sudden it gets into the decision, which is done behind closed doors. They try to make sure that everything is kept private until the decision comes out. We know that hasn't happened as of recently. See, our country has changed so much. Like in just this short period of time, who would have ever thought that a decision that being overruled would be put out like Roe v. Wade? I mean, that frustrates me. That leak frustrates me, and that we don't know anything about it still. That's not for me. That's not for me to cover. Landmark cases. Now, that's a landmark case. The Supreme Court has decided numerous landmark decisions, and one of my favorites, there was Roe v. Wade in 1973, which is no longer. There was, public impact. How does it impact the public? All kinds of different things. What influences the court? You think David Washington is over there influencing the court? I mean, he's just my business partner. He's just putting judges on the bench. He's just moving the needle just that little bit each time he puts somebody into office that is now serving in a legal capacity. And that legal capacity could lead to the Supreme Court. But even better, you don't even have to be a judge. You don't even have to be a judge to be a Supreme Court justice. Come on, guys. Take that one in for a moment because this is fun. You don't have to be a judge. Now, the question I'm going to give to you, and I want you to respond on our social, is to answer how many justices at this very moment were not judges. You don't even have to be a lawyer to be on the Supreme Court. Can you find me one of those? So I want to hear from you. So that's my challenge to the team out there, the people that watch. So I see no comments. I'll be fine, but I'll be sad. But let me just look at something because I have a bunch of notes here, and this one kind of gets me. The courts themselves. Let's say Supreme. So, let's see. The Supreme Court was created by Article 3 of the United States Constitution in 1789 and has remained the highest judicial authority in the country ever since. While the court's composition and members have changed over time as justices retire, pass away, or new appointments are made, it's always been the single institution. Oh, come on. That's not what I was looking for, but it's in my notes. So let's look at this one. Now, the Chief Justice. What we have one justice that's called the Chief Justice. And that Chief Justice kind of guides the other justices through what needs to happen. But when you look at the Chief Justice, it's not like the senior guy on the court, because my favorite Chief Justice was in my lifetime, and that was William Rehnquist. Now, William Rehnquist was made the Chief Justice by Ronald Reagan. Not the reason why he's my favorite. He's my favorite because he was the only Lutheran to be on the Supreme Court. Just trivia. Everybody gets a little trivia every once in a while. So, I mean, if you're Catholic, your religion always plays into this. I don't see why. But the very first Chief Justice was John Jay. John Jay established how the court was going to work, what it was going to do, how it was going to set precedents, how the oral arguments were going to come forth. And the justices, it took a long time after the Constitution was established to even get the court together. So we've had 17. Now think about this. I just told you that the Supreme Court started in 1789. And we've only had 17 chief justices. 17. And John Roberts, the current the Chief Justice, was not on the court before he was made Chief Justice. So he went from being a regular judge, nominated, and made the Chief Justice. I want to say Supreme Justice, but it's not. It's just this morning is like that day. But we refer to some of these as the Chief Justice is where we kind of focus those decisions. Like, what was the Jay court like? What was the Rutledge court like? The Ellsworth court. But which ones did like stand out? Like, do you have the Taft? Does anybody realize that President Taft was a Chief Justice? I mean, these are things that I think that if you just invest some time and learn, Taft never wanted to be president. His wife wanted him to be president. And if you start to look at society and how it worked, Taft, he just wanted to be a judge. Wanted to be a judge out in Ohio. He wanted to be on the Supreme Court. He was promised that. Ends up, that's not how it turned out. Oh, but here are the courts that we always talk about. We talk about the Warren, the Berger, the Rehnquist, and now we're talking about the Roberts Court. Those are the most recent courts. That's why we talk about them. So let's go to how do I put this? I want to go back to, for a moment, for you to realize that, how do I put this? The words are escaping me. When the Civil War was over, the Republicans were in the majority. There were a lot of decisions that were made and a lot of law that was made that when it went to the Supreme Court rejected it, overturned it, which slowed down the process of allowing equal rights between blacks and whites. So we look at we look at things sometimes in black and white, and we forget that there's three branches. So another thing you should look at is, what were those decisions? I mean, we're trying to free slaves. We had to make amendments to the Constitution to give the rights to blacks. We had to give them the right to vote. But why all of a sudden do we have these decisions like that lead us to segregation? Those are decisions that came from the Supreme Court because they said equal, but not the same, right? I'm saying this wrong, but we're basically saying that you can't deny blacks education. You can't deny blacks the right to vote. You can't deny blacks the right to shop, but you can have, as long as you provide them with education, you can segregate them. You can keep them out of your schools. As long as you do X, you have to provide X so you can have Y. That was a Supreme Court decision that lasted, and really it hurt our country. It hurt our country after Civil War. We try to get through this, and now we get, civil rights that need to be in justice, right? Is no justice at all. because these are people that are absolutely picked by a president, and the president has an agenda. And the president's agenda he wants on the Supreme Court because that influence will last for a very long time. And now we want to make sure we have very young justices. We don't want old justices anymore. We don't want any Ruth Bader Ginsburg's because, like, even when Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she wasn't old, but she was an older woman when she was put on the Supreme Court. A lot of people think she had been there for a long time, but she was a Clinton appointee. Now, you look at Clinton, that's in our lifetime. She's not. I mean, she's been criticized and she's been elevated in the same sense because Democrats wanted her to retire so that they were under a Democrat so that they could absolutely keep that seat. But because she passed away under a Republican, her replacement was a Republican. Well, I don't want to say Republican because really, conservative. I'm not sure. I'm just like, guys, I'm just looking and I'm saying these guys need to go to jail. Whoever does Chive TV. So, let's see. Where was I? So the burger. So we get. So Chief Justice is appointed by the President of the United States. Rehnquist was an actual justice when he became the the Chief Justice. Roberts was not. But now let's talk about my favorite thing as of recent is hypocrisy. And I get to I get to beat up on my own party, but I'm kind of proud of my party because one of the most conservative justices, Scalia, passes away mysteriously on a hunting trip. We don't know exactly what happened, but we know. How is it that a justice dies and we have very little to know about it? I mean, I'm not going to go down the conspiracy road, but it was during an election. So the legislature, being that the Republicans were in charge in the Senate, and the Senate, review and consent. So, hey, we're not going to seat a justice because the election is so close. I mean, we don't want this president to influence, the voters. The voters will make a decision, and that'll be the decision. So we go for months. I can't even remember off the top of my head. We go months without any replacement. So the court is got 8 justices on it. We get 4-4 decisions. We get deadlock. I mean, deadlock decisions are not good for the court. So we finally get an election, and everybody's shocked because Donald Trump wins. Donald Trump got to put 3 justices on the Supreme Court. There are some presidents that have never even gotten the opportunity to put a justice on the Supreme Court. So, what am I talking about hypocrisy? Because when Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, what does the Republicans who are in charge do? We've got to get this justice through. We got to get it through as quickly as possible. Let's make this happen. And the Democrats had no idea how to stop it. So, legislature has a lot to do with what happens. So, as David would say, elections have consequences. And the Supreme Court that makes decisions today was selected most likely years ago. But this court right here will make some seriously interesting decisions. And I think that we're getting a lot of 8-1 decisions that people are shocked about. People are saying, well, why would they do that? Because it's the Constitution. And that's the thing I really want people to focus on, especially Republicans. You can change the Constitution here, but you can't change the Constitution, the legal part of the Constitution. So these things that are absolutely happening is because we're trying to get things that aren't constitutional. And we want to make sure that the legislature has full power over making these congressional lines, period, no interference, no judicial oversight. Well, guess what? Only one justice felt that was the case. And that was Kavanaugh. So the Constitution's clear. And oftentimes these justices make the right decision no matter what happens, no matter how you feel. I trust that the justices will make that Supreme Court as unpolitical as possible, even though it is impossible because of the way they're selected and the way the legislature plays their games. So if you're not paying attention this week, there've been a lot of good decisions. A lot of Democrats sitting there shitting their pants going, I can't believe we won that one. I can't believe we won that one. But just like Roe v. Wade, Democrats, it's the law that they're looking at. They're looking at making sure case law is followed, that the judges made the right decision or the wrong decision, and that's why it comes to the Supreme Court. So thank you very much. Again, this is a production of Jay in Washington, your political innovation firm. We're glad to be here with you. And all I want you to do is take a moment to look at the Supreme Court, maybe read a book. But there is some really good information out there. So like, share, do whatever you can. But again, justice is no justice at all. Thank you.